I ordered a standing desk frame online and it came in this box, which is fairly heavy. Hey look, a manual! So the makers of this desk had actually approached me about doing a sponsored video, but ultimately the only thing it would offer me is a free desk, and I looked online, it only cost $200 for the frame that I'm using here, and I thought for $200 it's really not worth getting sponsored, because if I just pay for it myself, I can do the video whichever way I want to. So I'm just plugging together the electrical bits for this here, and I want to see how that actuator works. And there it goes. It's not too loud. So I need screws to attach these legs to the bottom here. 2 legs for each, must be 8 screws. There's 8 of these, so these E screws must be the right ones. Not quite right here yet. This telescoping shaft connects the actuators on the left and right side. There's only one motor on the right side. There. This would be a standing desk for somebody much taller than me. I got a few leftover bits. This, I'm pretty sure, is meant to hold this power adapter. These 2 brackets, I don't know. Time to check the manual. Where'd those go? Oh, I see. Those cover up some of the mechanism. Max load rating is 70 kilograms or 154 pounds. I weigh more than that, so let's see what happens if I sit on it. Hey! It does it. Cool. Woohoo! That's taking me quite to lofty heights. So I like to have a desk at 72 centimeters or 28.5 inches. And this is an inch higher than that, which sucks a bit, but this doesn't appear to be bottomed out here. So maybe I can change the limit switches so that this goes all the way down. I'll get a little bit of height back that way. And looking at this here, I thought the limit switches would be somewhere in here, but there's no connection to that. So possibly this box has got some gearing in it that figures out how far it can go, which is to say if I take this off, crank the legs down and put this back on, maybe then I can go all the way down. I just need to partially disassemble what I put together to get at that to do it. Ah yes, those legs can definitely go all the way down. There we go. Aha, so the limit switches are built into this motor. It only goes so far, which means if I crank the leg all the way down and crank the motor all the way down, then the legs will be bottomed out when the motor stops. I'm looking for the top limit now. There it is, okay, and down again. I'll just use this to crank the leg all the way down, and maybe I'll go one slight bit above that. Let's see. Up, down. Okay, that's good. So now I've got the problem that if I put this on here, this doesn't perfectly line up with the hex hole in here. It's actually just halfway in between 2. So I have to change the alignment of this somehow. And I've got a whole bunch of index marks here. I can put this together in different alignments that are smaller than 1/6 of a turn, so just tweaking that by one little increment, maybe it'll fit now. Okay, now I'm at 28.5 inches or half a centimeter over 72, so that's pretty close. And I want to put together a desk that's a little bit wider than this. With that shallow scoring pass, I was able to avoid tear on the bottom for the most part. I'm using that extra bit that I cut off the width of it to reinforce the front, basically making it a bit thicker, which will dramatically make the front edge a lot stiffer. Then later that day, I had the kids in the workshop to take apart a microwave because they always enjoy that sort of stuff, and I wanted the microwave transformer from this old microwave. But I also had the standing desk frame in the shop and showed them what it does, and they were quite fascinated with writing it up and down. But then this happened. I neglected to screw in this set screw, so then eventually it just popped apart, and then the other leg wouldn't go up and down anymore. And this nut also needs to be tightened up so that this telescoping shaft won't push together, and that keeps it from popping out of this one too. So then I decided maybe the kids shouldn't be riding it up and down anymore, but that didn't stop them from playing with it further. The next day, with the glue dried on the desktop, I ran it over the jointer to straighten and flatten that front edge so I could glue something to it. I'm gluing on this piece of oak, which will cover up the end grain of the plywood because it's not a very pretty plywood. And also that'll give me something to route a nice round over into. And it will also add a bit more stiffness to the front edge. And with the glue fully dried, I'm going to dowel that front edge on there as well, just for good measure. First the holes, and then glue in the holes, and then actually the dowels are pieces of bamboo skewers. Then rounding the front corners so that it doesn't hurt so much if you bang into them. I glued that front oak piece on so it was just a tiny bit proud of the plywood. So now I'm using a belt sander to flush it so it matches, carefully feeling that I'm getting close because I don't want to sand into the plywood too much. I'm also sanding a round over the other edges of the desk. That way I don't have to worry too much about chip out with that plywood. And routing a much larger radius over the front edge. This needs to be a larger radius so that it feels comfortable if you rest your arms or your wrist on the front edge. And I did that in 2 passes of increasing depth, that way I'm not cutting out too much. Also, it's because I'm doing a climb cut and I don't want the router to grab too much, because cutting backwards it really tends to pull into the cut. And smoothing the transition between those 2 radius just with a random orbital sander. I'm not sure what these rubber grommet pads are for. I thought maybe to dampen vibrations from the motor to make it quieter. But it doesn't seem to make a difference whether the top is on the grommets or not. So I'm just going to take those out. I don't think I need them. I swapped the bolts that hold the uprights to the legs with ones that have flatter heads, just to get that lower down later. And a little block to hold the cables in place so they don't dangle down when it's not upside down. I'm taking off the leveling feet and replacing those with just felt pads. That gets it a bit lower down. Also adding some felt pads where the bolts are, just so those don't scratch the floor. And now with the grommets off and the leveling feet off, I'm at 72 centimeters exactly. So that's the height I wanted. This is sped up a little bit. It actually takes 11 seconds to go from sitting height to my standing height. So this standing desk wasn't actually for me, it's for my wife's work from home setup, and today she's working from the office. Because the work that I do, there's plenty of time spent in the shop and such, so I get to stand on my feet already. But for her, all the work is on the computer. But I've come to realize when messing around with electronics at this table, sometimes it'd be nice to be able to stand up at it, so a standing desk frame for electronics might actually be quite nice. The only problem with that is the mechanism completely precludes having nice drawers like this on it.